Iwesjotins kumandi ndicela umthandazo ubizazwe yatakata iyabazumba esjotins kumandi.
Revolutionary greetings, fighters. Welcome to the third lesson of the EFF Students Command's online political school. This lesson will deal with taking us through the founding manifesto, which was adopted by the founding National People's Assembly of the Economic Freedom Fighters, held in Mangaung on the 26th and 27th of July 2013. This document, as it is correctly referred to as the Bible of the EFF, guides our theoretical and practical outlook towards the revolution of economic emancipation of all people in Africa and in the diaspora. The document is organized through current and political conditions, outlines the character of the EFF, the strategic mission of the EFF, the cardinal and complementary pillars, as well as who stands to benefit. In this lecture, I will ensure that I give a perspective of students and ensure that I bring it down to the context of students and the role that we are supposed to play in the pursuit of economic freedom. This is Deputy President of the EFF Students Command, Liz Amfana, and I welcome you to the fact lecture. Shall we begin? So we will begin with looking through the preamble of the document, which actually takes us through is a 7-point summary of what the document will look to give, or the type of political perspective. So point 1 reads, our decision is to fight for the economic emancipation of people of South Africa, Africa and the world. Economic freedom fighters locate the struggle for economic emancipation within the long line of resistance of South African to racist, colonial and imperialist political, economic and social domination. The glorious resistance started with the Khoi and the San people rising against the colonial domination, marked by the arrival of the settlers and colonialists in 1652 in the Cape. This basically represents more than 350 years of Africa's resistance against colonial and economic domination and exploitation. Point 2, the EFF recognizes that despite the temporary victories in this or that battle, Africans were defeated, humiliated, and enslaved by the colonial settlers, thereby symbolizing colonial victory over the indigenous people of the South African territory. The EFF draws inspiration from the gallant fight those who came before us have mounted generation after generation against the superior firepower of the colonialists. The EFF intends to elevate this resistance to a decisive victory to vindicate the justness of the cause of liberation wars and to pay tribute to all those who perished fighting for the liberation of the African people and all oppressed people of our land. Now, these first 2 points give us a theoretical and contextual overview of the type of conceptualization that led to the birth of the EFF. The fact that we were colonized by the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck and his friends on the 6th of April 1652 is the founding contradiction that has led us to actually mount this class race-based revolution of the EFF. Point 3 goes on to say, those who fought the gallant wars of resistance did so to resist forced dispossession of land, wealth, livestock and heritage, which they cherished and inherited from their forebears. More than 350 years later, the war of resistance has not been won, and the battle that were fought almost represent nothing, because 20 years after the attainment of political freedom, the black people of South Africa still live in mass poverty and landlessness. Their children have no productive future. They are mistreated and they are looked down upon in a sea of wealth. Now, this point gives the class perspective of the racial oppression that we face as a people. It actually leads us to understand that one of the fundamental reasons for the colonial conquest was to take over the wealth of Africans, was to take over the lands of Africans, and was to take over the rich heritage, or in fact separate Africans from their rich heritage. Point number 4 goes on to say, while relatively developed, South Africa, like many other colonies, is trapped in a colonial division of labor as supplier of primary commodities to colonizer nation. This colonial feature cannot and will never be broken by the continued economic dominance of private corporations, particularly in the natural and mineral resources sector. Multinationals and private ownership of South Africa's commanding heights of the economy should be discontinued in order to stimulate state-led and aided industrial development. This one is very clear and self-explanatory, fighters. Once they took over our lands and our resources, they established multinational corporations to continue their dominance over these particular resources. This was the legitimization process that took place, so that now we refer to them as companies, no longer as imperialists, no longer as colonialists. We refer to them as Anglo-America, as BHT Billington, as registered members of the JSE, such as ABSA or Barclays International. We refer to them through all of these particular legalized terms that take away the fact that they stole the wealth of Africans, they stole the land of Africans. Point number 5, our indignation at the continued economic domination of the people of South Africa and the extreme exploitation of black working class explains where we come from, where we are, what our mission is, what our character is, and what is to be done to emancipate the people of South Africa, the working class in particular, from economic bondage. The solutions we provide represent a coherent ideological tradition and draw inspiration from the developments around the world on what has been done to advance the development and betterment of people's lives in the aftermath of the defeat of colonialism against imperialism. Point number 6, South Africa is rooted in an alliance between British and Afrikaner capital. From its inception, capitalism in South Africa was underlined by racism, segregation, and sexism. It discriminated and oppressed the black majority. It discriminated and oppressed women. South African capitalism continues to be characterized by extreme exploitation of the black working class. In short, the black majority, whatever their class location, are integrated into the mainstream of the economy in a subservient position relative to white people. While the legalistic forms of colonial apartheid domination have been eroded 20 years ago, the economic systems that marginalized, oppressed, and exploited the black majority is still intact, with a few individuals benefiting, but only because they have been co-opted to portray a wrong picture that all is well and will be well in our country. Now, it brings us to the context of your Ramaphosa's, the president of the state, your Patrice Mutsipes, who have been co-opted into the imperialist domination of the country in order to close our mouth as black people when we try to raise the racialized nature of the imperialist domination of the country. We must understand, fighters, that there is no economic transformation that exists in South Africa. Each and every black person that is wealthy or that is viewed as a member of the bourgeoisie ruling elite is in fact an extension of the poor black people, is in fact a barrier between the real ruling class and the working class, and is designed to ensure that they manage the working class from rebelling against the elite and exploitative ruling class. It is Dr. Khalid Abdul Mohammed who explains it best, that if you go to a communist party, to a communist country, you will find the white communist on top and the black communist at the bottom. You go to a socialist country, you find the white communist socialist is at the top and the black socialist at the bottom. You go to a capitalist country, it remains the same. The white capitalist at the top and the black capitalist at the bottom. So we want to dispel that notion today, that there is no such thing as a black elite in South Africa. There is no such thing as a black member of the ruling elite. All of these people who view themselves as members of the ruling elite are in fact puppets, are in fact people who are used to ensure that black people do not rebel against the ruling elite. Now, point number 7. The EFF notes and appreciate the role played by generations of political freedom fighters who sacrificed their lives, were imprisoned, exiled, banished, and separated from their families in the pursuit of freedom. The reality, nonetheless, is that political freedom attained symbolically in 1994 through inclusive elections has not translated into economic freedom. which must empower and assist the oppressed and exploited people of South Africa to be liberated from economic and social bondage. This feature of South Africa